What the fuck is that, Vinny Beedle?
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Scumbag Vinny. These folks right here have the biggest scam going. And even the guys I did take money from that were new in the game, I gave them experiences that they would never have gotten, man. And people did. Scumbag Vinny, bro.
And there was like 8 comics on the show, and they all sucked. And he got on stage, and he was like, "Vinny, did you just stop at a red light and say, hey, you want to open for Artie Lange tonight?"
Vinny Beedle's a good man, and we'll be back.
Well, I used to go to concerts when I was a teenager, and I would sell fake tickets to events.
I've made it clear I have no problem that you scammed numerous people. No.
It's such an important part of my background.
If somebody's trying to get into comedy and somebody rips them off so bad that they have to quit comedy, you've done them a favor.
This movie needed Vinny Beedle to show up in like a stolen Ford Taurus. What up, it's Bam Margera. Go listen to the best podcast in the world, SCUMTOWN.
Vinny Beedle is who? Compton?
Oh yeah, Compton. You want a fresh piece of shit, man.
You're a bigger scumbag than Vinny Beedle.
Yeah, man.
Vinny, I want you to take down the post of the town now, or I will have the legal authorities get involved with you.
Now that I found out that this whole thing was a scam, I kind of really like him.
Wow. Welcome everybody to
the first episode.
The first episode of the new podcast. I'm laughing there just re-listening to Tom Myers' agent threat to call the police on me and have me arrested for offering Tom Myers to do a tour with me and make $1,000. And Tom didn't even want to talk to me. He wanted the police involved. So
was that his manager that called you on his behalf?
Well, posted on my Instagram, he basically was with one of these agencies that, you know, you basically pay to get like your picture website, and they'll get you like, you know, they'll say they'll get you like commercial gigs or TV gigs or shit like that, but it's not like a real agency, you know. And so I posted on my Instagram that they were a bigger scam than I, you know, and that's what got her so upset. But I think they were called impressive talent. And the funniest part is, like, Tom, you know, tons of people that listen to him from SCUMTOWN, and he wasn't even like on their website at all. So like they didn't know who he was or take anything he does seriously. And so I called the agency legit. It was like, I will pay you $10,000 to let me tour with Tom. And they said, oh, we'll get back to him. We think it's a great... Of course, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't even know who this guy was. They had to look up in their, you know, files and say, we signed up with Myers. He got a $10,000 office. Wants to went nuts, you know?
I was thinking a little earlier, the last thing I heard you on was SCUMTOWN, like right before COVID happened. And you were talking about going back on tour with Bam. Coronavirus became a thing. I think that was a big reason that got Bam off the wagon and had him lose his whole Jackass deal.
It's actually funny. So we'll talk about all this, but I haven't been doing anything podcast in about 9 months. And, you know, there is a lot to talk about and catch up on. I believe that the COVID well for Bam because, you know, before he was trying to get well like he is now, any addict, no matter what you're addicted to, is never on your side. It's if you have to wait something out, if they pause filming for COVID or whatever, it's like, you know, it's just more days that something bad can happen. And it looked to me like he was in movie shape at that time. It's funny, I don't know if it's done on purpose, but with Johnny Knoxville's hair being black in the bandstand scene that Bam is in Jackass Forever, where they're in the treadmill with the musical instruments. I actually remember Bam kind of texting me today when it was happening and saying what happened, and it was a long time ago. And so I guess maybe they filmed a lot more with Bam and decided to cut out because of his actions afterwards online. Because he's in a legal thing with them, I'm not going to put any of his opinions out there, but I'm just speaking like from when I first heard about it, what my initial thought, you know, are they going to stop and reshoot this thing without him for a while? And it seems like that's how it played out because they didn't bring people like MG or Eric Andre really until after all of that, because a lot of the scenes Johnny's hair is now gray. I'm sure he was stressing a lot about the Bam situation. So I'm sure just doing the whole movie put a stress guy after not doing it for so long. But at the same time, what I'm saying is there's a lot of scenes I bet where Bam is well. And so it's like, did they, you know, everybody was on speculation, did they fire him drunk on set and stuff? You know, that was not the case, right? I mean, he was on lockdown during COVID after they filmed the movie, and at least most of it, or a good chunk of it, and I think that's when he had a slip up. But I think his whole argument is never like anything without a represent, or done any kind of like wellness agreement. I mean, it all is sketchy, man.
That's a problem with skaters in general, is skaters are used to their friends being the owners of whatever company sponsors them. So it's like, oh yeah, sure, let's just have a meeting ourselves and sign the contract. But when Paramount's involved, that's probably not the best way to handle things.
Yeah, and it's like what it is a mix of obviously, what has going on with his addiction, but at the same time, and now he's got that under control. This is far back now. We're going back to hash up old stuff, but at the time he really wasn't ready to like make decisions for his career. And these are the guys like stuff who would call me up and Bam's not in the right mind to do comedy shows with you, but all of a sudden now he's in the right mind to like make decisions that are big. So I just feel like he kind of thinks, and I feel the same way, that they want him off the movie from the beginning. That doesn't make sense really, because they filmed a lot with him, but I mean something happened that made them say maybe we made a mistake.
Bam's been involved with those guys since he was a little kid, like back when before Jackass was Jackass, and half those guys worked for Big Brother magazine. They met Bam when Bam was like 14 years old, just randomly out in the street. To him, that's been his entire life, and it's like, sure, sign whatever contract. I would imagine that you resent, you know what I mean? Especially when you find out, like, well, wait, how come Steve-O used to have crippling addiction to drugs? He's not under any sort of strict watch.
One of the first things about Steve-O and what you just said about him, those things kind of match up and make sense, but it is more coincidence now that I've realized, like, Steve-O, even through this movie, had his own, like, struggles with the people who are made. Like, really, it's just Knoxville, Spike Jonze, and Tremaine. Like, as Steve-O gets involved when he wants to try to meet between Bam and that. But besides that, he really is a good guy. I mean, I used to have weird feelings about Steve-O because as a kid in Jackass, some people aren't obsessed with them. Some people just like it all, right? Some people don't have a favorite. Some people just like the whole thing. I think he would take like me meeting and knowing and working with Bam a little bit as a comedian, as like I'm a Bam guy. You get what I'm saying? There's, like Vin Bam guy. And they do have those in their fan bases, people who like them both, but there's certain people who pick sides, And so it was never that. I mean, truthfully, what got me to, because you can find things on the internet where I'm shit talking Steve-O, and a lot of that, not to rehash too much of it, was when he started messaging me to cancel Bam's tour originally and trying to tell me I was the root for Bam, this and that, right? Well, I knew that time would be on my side as I continue to just do the right thing. I'd be in Bam's life, and that has shown itself true over a long period, right? Because when I first met Bam, I was working with him and all the bullshit happened, but here we are, 3 years later, and me and him have actually grown closer as friends and not really strangers, and trying to help each other. I don't want to say help each other because, he helps me without knowing. Of course he helped me, but I'm really trying to help him stay sober and in where he's at, which he's doing very well. I was talking to him on an everyday period via text while he's been in rehab and this has now been from facilities over 2 different states over the last year. But it slows down here and there. And actually, as it slows down, it's kind of good signs that he is getting shit going and back on track. But when he texts me, it's not like him trying to escape doing there. He's just like talking normally, just trying to get information what's going on with everything on the outside world while he focuses on getting better. So he is doing the right thing, and he's, from what I know, he has a date they've given him to be released, but that doesn't mean it's going to be tomorrow. It could be next week. It could be from now, but that is between, his legal team and the judge and whatnot. And from what I've heard, he has a release date, which means that stay on the path of recovery, which means he's participating a lot more. I mean, that is great. If Bam came out today and was like, Bam's 100%, can you imagine how busy the man will be for 10? So he'll be taking time off, I'm sure, to kind of like rest his mind, much like Artie Lange does. I don't know if you follow his podcast, but he's been clean for a few years. and he'll do it for a little while and then take a break, and then come back to it and do it for a little while and take a break. He doesn't want to overload himself. You know?
He recently stopped doing his podcast for a while again, didn't he? And he had to come on. I think he came on Twitter and let everyone know, like, hey, no, stop tweeting me. I didn't relapse. I just don't feel like doing the podcast right now.
Well, you know what's funny is like he did that for a good 20 years, was basically tell people he's going to change and then didn't change. So that's why people react that way. But when I met Artie Lange, I actually met a guy who was on drugs every day, but you can tell wanted out. And he was in like a self prison. There were times that people would tell me he's not going to show up, and he would show up, or he's going to be, and he was started to set like goals for himself. Like, okay, I'm going to start improving even before he got off drugs. And I'm so happy for Bam's path, because through the whole like rot of Scumbag Vinny character, and that went on with the rumors with these two celebrities in particular, everybody had speculated for a while that, you know, I was reading that these guys were train wreck, when really they had both been on a very long-term binge, you know, with both of what their addictions were. And since I've known them, I mean, I don't have much really to do with Artie anymore, but he's on a, you know, 2 to 3 year story. He's doing really well. And Bam is doing really, really well himself, as far as when people set that timeline from 2019, when I first met him, until now, went from drugs and alcohol to just manic thoughts to, you know, I mean, like ups and downs, going back to that. And even, you know, over the last year, the last thing he was struggling with was alcohol. So he's in this full-time facility, he's not drinking, and you got to think to yourself, if this guy stays super clean, well, it'll kind of just get like a little bit of justification behind like my actions, being like, well, I wasn't so bad because these guys are doing real great now. You know, if anything, running into me might not be such a bad thing.
I think it's a necessary thing for people that have had such a drastic change in their careers, like people like Artie that used to be on Howard Stern every day, or Bam used to have his own reality show and used to be in movies. You need to have some sort of reasonable level to start at. Well, if Bam wants to go out and start doing comedy clubs, you know, he shouldn't be doing big, gigantic, like 5,000 person rooms for his second time doing stand-up, because he really doesn't know what he's doing. It's kind of showcase, right, you know, when you went on stand-up with him, and, you know, you guys kind of developed what you guys were going to do as you were doing it. That's not really something you can do if you have 10,000 people to pay $30 to show up and see Bam like figure out how to do stand-up / podcast / telling a story. That's not really fair to people. So you got to let Bam or already do their small things or network with other people. As much as someone like Steve-O sees a Scumbag Vinny character and thinks to himself, well, this guy clearly just is trying to get money out of Bam. You also got to remember, Bam's not even in this for the money. Bam has money. Bam's bored. He wants to do something and wants to create stuff. And so he needs to be able to explore that, even if it's with, you know, someone with a reputation for scamming. Maybe, you know, Bam has 3D printed rings. He's not opposed to scamming. You know what I mean? Those things aren't made out of real steel. It is what it is. You know what you're buying.
Yeah, exactly. You know, an ultimate grifter move. The ring situation was something that, like, when he was in Estonia, I guess he met the guy and, like, bought the machine, and, like, the guy was supposed to do all the work. And, like, it's not that the guy's not working hard, because coming from somebody who's, like, a small timer working hard, like, you can work your ass off and do, like, 5,000 in sales, and Bam will look at it and be like, oh, it's failing. You know, even though, I mean, the guy's made $50 million in his life. So getting into business with Bam with intentions on making him money is not going to work out, because nobody could make him that much money. Well, it's a good thing now that we are going to be able to edit this a little bit, at least, you know, and chop up some cool parts and fucking figure it out as we go, you know? I mean, the whole point is I'm scamming folks into thinking this is a real podcast anyways, so...
You fake it till you make it, and then
exactly.
You're selling rings from Estonia. That's how it works.
Yeah, and I know the guy, so that's actually like a real business possible, you know, thing, and he actually could use the work, so
That's my next scam that I want to get into personally. Someone sold me on that idea. They're like, buy a 3D printer and you could just make and sell pretty much anything.
Well, that's what I've been up to since COVID. I started a new grift because the entertainment world, it didn't die. Like, comedians and people were fighting in every way possible, but you could imagine how low, scamming open micers is one thing, but scamming like virtual show comedians is another, because they can hop in other chat rooms if you're doing show. Like, I like at least that if I was like scamming a comic in, I don't know where, Kentucky, that he's not going to show up in Pennsylvania, the next day.
Yeah, you're able to at least kind of keep control of it. You never have a situation where you go to do a show with someone live and they bring 10,000 of their friends and fans.
Yeah,
for a room that was only made for 200 people.
Yeah, exactly. And anybody that's watching virtually is not going to give a shit about any act that's on there but the person they're clicking to see, and so unless it's like a one-man thing, and then it's just sad. It's just like I stayed away from it. So I actually, we're in Florida, and I was just trying to figure out ways I could make money, grift around, do some entrepreneurial type things, but still keep my options open for when, old Hollywood came knocking again. And I got into the resale business, which is funny because the resale community, they all really respect one another because they want to make it a real thing so bad, but really it's just people fucking ripping each other off all over the place.
Moving things 4 or 5 hands, you know what I mean? Just keep selling it for more and more.
Yeah, and like basically just selling used things, and making a profit off of it. And as I like was looking into it, I'm like, oh my God, this is like what I was born to do. In a sense, it's like get people to give me money for shit that I shouldn't get money for, like stuff that's already been purchased, used, whatever. And so it started because we live near Disney, so I would get my hands on some like Disney memorabilia and start to sell it like that, and then the next thing you know, you're buying 1,000 pairs of shoes somewhere, and you're just like in the middle of like the Florida farmlands at some ladies. Fuck, it's happening to my life. And you're like explaining to this lady who Bam Margera is, and like showing her pictures on your phone.
That's where you must sound like a real scam artist, is when you're in some random state. No, you don't understand. I know Bam Margera. You ever listen to Howard Stern?
Yeah, like he is the total, like him and Artie are the total get out of sketch free cards. Like even if it was just like me buying weed somewhere and like the guys sketched out, I'm like, I just start name dropping celebrities I know just to make them feel like I'm not a cop. You know what I mean? But
I don't know if hey, I know Artie Lange is necessarily gonna make them think you're not a cop. I guess it depends on how familiar they are with Artie.
I don't even think. I mean, they're mostly just young, like black kids, and like, but like they have no idea who I'm talking about. But I guess they just want to hear me talk about something, because if you've ever seen like a movie where like an undercover cop's doing a drug deal, he's always very quiet and asking questions about the drugs. So I just talk about myself for 10 minutes until they just put the weed in my lap, take the money, and get out of my car.
Yeah, after this, I'm going to Disney World. You just brag a lot.
Yeah. You just talk about where you came from and shit. Like, I've met because I moved to Florida, and I don't know if, a lot of people listening probably haven't even, maybe they don't even know or care if they haven't heard from me in a while. But I've lived in Florida since the beginning of COVID. We actually spent like 4 months in our apartment in Connecticut during the worst of COVID. And, it was total lockdown up north, and we just said, fuck it. And we moved down here, and, it's like a totally different world down here. And it really is. I mean, people are scamming left and right, dude. There's people scamming in real estate. There's scams everywhere in Florida, and
that's where all the retirement money is, right? So it's pretty much just a big, giant, like QVC commercial, the entire state.
It really is, and old people are your best allies, because anybody that's young and from Florida is so methed out of their mind. Like, they can become good connections to get you good merchandise to sell because they know you'll have the cash and there's no games, meaning that, a lot of like meth addicts sell at flea markets around here, and like let's say they got I don't know 40 pairs of Jordans, right? They're gonna know to call me because I'm not gonna haggle them down because they know what it's worth. They know what it's worth, but they need drug money now. It's like people think that crackheads take a little bit of money because they are stupid or something, and it's just no, they need that fix, so they'll sell whatever, and later on they probably regret it, and they're like, damn, I gave up $2,000 worth of shoes.
Right. If I could have just resisted the urge to do crack for a couple more hours, I could have doubled my money, but I'm high now, so you get what you pay for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Bam was kind of doomed from the start, to be honest, not to bring him back up, but I mean, the skater community is pretty like bottom of the barrel, and I would compare them to like the resale community ways. And like, so if you're partying with people,
has his feet in two communities. He's in the grungiest part of skateboarding, but then he's also in like the thrash metal punk rock, throw shit at the wall community too.
Yeah, that's
those two
true.
overlap when he's around.
That's true, and I think both of those communities obviously complement him well. It's just that if he's around certain people and they're partying, they're not going to have the most expensive kind of drug around. So, when if it's meth or something else that he's gotten his hands on at one point, it's like you can't really be surprised with kind of that just be around, bro. I mean, you've seen it. You're in the skate world, and it's pretty hardcore.
I'll also never be surprised about people that are slightly famous or people that go to parties a lot. There's so many people I've met secondhand that will talk about so and so pro skater. Well, especially when I lived in Seattle. Seattle is like a meth heroin, paradise. And people would just be like, yeah, I know so-and-so pro skater. I did meth with them one time. Like, they would just say it like it was normal. And there's a lot of stories of, from the 90s, pro skaters that got really, really famous in their, formative years, like 17 to 19, 20, and they were just doing meth or crack all the time. A lot of your favorite skaters did crack. What I mean? That's just something that people my age and older have to, acknowledge.
Well, imagine though, like crack just comes out and nobody knows what it's going to do to people yet. That is what got people like, so you judge a crackhead based on what they look like now, but what everybody looked normal when crack first came out, right? Nobody was strung out on crack when crack first came out. So like, you can't really blame the first. I mean, maybe now, if I was on crack now, I'd be like, dude, you've seen what it does to people. But like, if crack just came out, I was probably fair game to be a crackhead, just because people be like, dude, no, you smoke it and you get high. Like I smoke weed every day. Yeah, you get so much more done. It's like smoking a Red Bull, dude, and then like 6 months go by and you're in some lady's barn trying to figure out, I'm just kidding.
But that's why it's hard. That's why you can't judge celebrities too much when it's like a guy that was in a rock band from the 80s or 90s or even the 2000s who's in his 40s or 50s now is going to have stories of doing coke or this one time I tried meth or they mixed the crack in with the coke or, nowadays it's fentanyl.
Well, so that's the whole thing, though, with Bam is like, he's been paid to be this jackass for so long. And even when you hear these guys talk in their post interviews for Jackass Forever, even Knoxville, they all talk about when they had pill addictions or drinking addictions or something. But none of them ever had to sign the type of responsibility agreement like this. There also is the factor that, Bam was probably making more money than most of the people in the movie. And so if he's not,
he deserves to though.
Yeah, he does.
He came up with the premise.
That's the same argument though that like sports teams give to like fans when they're like, listen, I know that this guy hit 30 home runs for 15 years, but now he's a piece of shit that can barely do anything and just drinks and lives in an RV in the parking lot. and I can't give him $10 million a year anymore. You know what I mean?
Like, I got there was a way that they could have included him in the movie and cut back. Maybe they fucked up by giving him, offering him an allegedly $5 million contract. Maybe they should have negotiated how much he participated or something like that. Because Bam really did come up with the idea for Jackass.
So
it's
not only did
CKY,
right? So he did come up with that, and so like the other thing is, yes, they could have. The whole point of what I'm saying is it's a part of why they didn't want him in from the beginning. It's almost like Tremaine and Johnny Knoxville wanted to do a Big Brother movie, but they can't because nobody knows what Big Brother is. And, Bam's addiction kind of is just timely, right? Like Ryan Dunn was a very big part of the CKY half of Jackass, because if you look at it, and this is why Bam is so loved, okay? This is what people have to realize. The main characters of Jackass came from the Big Brother brand and Bam and his crew, right? So it's Big Brother plus Bam and his crew. Well, if you watch all the old movies, Ryan Dunn is the only other person that really rose to the occasion out of Bam's crew and became like a Jackass mainstay. And, God rest his soul, he's passed on now, which makes it easy for the Big Brother crew to chop down at the CKY bits and take back that piece of the pie. If originally a Jackass deal looked something like 50-50 CKY and Big Brother, well, then getting rid of Bam gives a large portion of the profits back to them. And we're talking about movies that make a lot of money, and this is a business at the end of the day, right? So Bam's whole thing that he would talk about was specifics on why they were getting rid of him, which I didn't agree 100%, but I understood what he was saying because, at the end of the day, all of a sudden Bam is off the movie and they can hire Eric Andre. They got the money to pay him. They got the money to pay Machine Gun Kelly. They got the money to pay all these other people that they brought in. And this was afterwards, and it looks super pathetic. Like, damn, man.
I know it's like they split up $5 million like 5 or 6 different ways.
They definitely did, and at the same time, offer Bam a couple million to just shut up and be done with it. But he is like, I may be drunk, I may be fucking fatter now and whatever, but I still got a brain enough to know that this is not a square fucking deal. And, so he's going to fight hard. And that is what he's doing in Rehab now. And you guys are going to see a totally different Bam. I really, truly believe that. And he's going to come out firing on all cylinders like someone who's just been in the pits of fucking battle, dude. And everybody thinks is dead. The whole civil war is going on. And everybody on Bam's side is fucking just taken care of because either they've literally left his side and just sided with Jackass anyway, or they just completely have vanished from the scene. Nobody has this guy's back, right? And he's going to come out, dude, looking like a G with the CKY banner on his fucking chest. That's what's
for it. I want the redemption of Bam arc.
And I'll be honest with you, dude. He's like one of them guys that can beat the shit. Like, I feel like he's the kid in the crew that everybody knows, like, I don't want to say physically, but like metaphorically, like I can smash all of you. And yeah, I'll take a fat kid named Vinny and some autistic, singer named Matt Lindwood and, just like all these random nobodies and still come and fucking, beat you guys down and take all your fans back and shit. But
that's what it was before too. Before anyone knew who Jackass was, it was literally a bunch of nobodies. You know what I mean? Right. And then Bam was kind of famous. That was it. And so why can't Bam just again compile a bunch of quote unquote nobodies? I mean, there's a never ending supply of
nobodies,
shit, young skaters that will jump off of a building for him. So,
and he is gonna do that. And you know what else is crazy though? I think he just really wanted to do a reunion movie, like a friendly, like this is gonna be awesome.
That's why it's sad because the whole.
And you want to know it's
called Jackass Forever, and he's not even mentioned or anything.
Well, the original name of the movie was supposed to be Jackass, Not Done Yet, like with Dunn's name or something like that. Jackass 4, We're Not Done Yet. Like, and it was like supposed to be really Bam centric. The movie, I think that's truly why there were so many reshoots and recasts and stuff. Was it was gonna be like, because what I seen, the film I seen of him in the movie, the little part, he looks real good, you know, and ready. Because if you've been around Bam in the last 2 years, you know that you couldn't get him to take off his goth clothing and chains and rings for fucking anything. So to see him in a band outfit in line doing what they're telling him to do, he looked really ready to do the movie, you know?
It always makes me laugh when I see Bam in his Instagram videos and he's talking. You can hear all of his rings and his chains knocking together because he's got so many.
Just
on.
like fucking
he's got so many
jingling around
zippers on his outfit. And
actually, the first time I ever was in a car with him, I'm driving on the highway and he just takes this sweater he's wearing and he takes his scissors and he starts stabbing holes in it everywhere. And I don't know what the fuck he's doing. Then he takes his scarf and he starts like knitting the scarf through the holes and like he's creating a piece of clothing in front of me, you know, like he's just got his own artistic views of things. But I said this on podcasts before, like, I remember like waking up at his house and you know, my mind is more of where my talent is, whether it was with comedy or sales or whatever the hell I did. And, you know, or just giving people advice or teaching people. And, you know, I did that kind of shit for a long time. And when I was at his house, I'd be like, damn, this kid just went from skating in a bowl, recording music. Now he's painting a gigantic painting in his living room. He told me we're going to a premiere tonight. We're doing all these things. And he's
in his 40s.
And he was so busy, man. And he was one of the most remarkable people I've ever met in my entire life. So the whole, like, real story behind this all is gonna come to light. Let me just explain something, and you know this. With stories like Bam's, there are thousands and thousands of videos put out there and speculations and people like me talking, and stuff goes on for years like that, and then boom, that first legitimate documentary that comes out, whether it's going to be from Netflix or HBO or somebody like that, is going to show the truth of what really happened with Bam Margera. And let me tell you guys, through all of it, I know more than anybody that has reported on this guy. I've learned more about his situation than anyone. I know things I could never talk about. You know, he dragged me through hell, and I think he needed somebody to be at the bottom with them for a while, and I truly was. And he kept me there for a while, and he would literally, at the bottom, the pits of despair of life, educate me at the same time. Like, this was a guy that could literally be fighting demons in his head and be able to articulate to me with words what is going on and what he truly believes is happening, which is definitely some kind of form of psychosis, but more in like a genius type way. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like when he does his calligraphy, that's how you feel about Bam. You're like, this guy's a mad scientist.
100%, man. He used to call me in the middle of the night and just explain to me his, you know, everything. And, you know, I wasn't the type of person to record anything, but I really remembered a lot. And, you know, just holding all of this in for so long has been in part because I did truly believe for a long time that he had some kind of grand plan to, you know, help my career in some way. And that's what he would always explain to me. And I do believe he truly wanted that and wants that. And I think that his addiction got in the way of any kind of like thing we were trying to do with one another. And that's what hurts so much, is that, you know, I really worked super hard for a long time to try to make it somewhere. And, you know, it was really easy for me to fall into the Scumbag Vinny role, you know, and to fall into like, you know, fuck it, I'm gonna lean into this heavy and
just make my percentage and be good, you know, move on. But
yeah, and then things didn't work out that way. And, you know, through his rehab stints, dude, there's even been times, you know, recently, I went through a lot of personal stuff. My wife and we suffered a miscarriage and lost a baby, and it was stuff that we had. The reason I'm even bringing it up is we had talked about it and announced our pregnancy on Instagram, and, you know, went this whole route like that originally. So it's just something that like parked my brakes for a long time. And out of everybody in my life, and Bam was untouchable at the time, in rehab, in Florida, in a facility where he could barely talk to anybody as it is, and literally hears the news and hops the fence of the rehab and finds his way to Orlando somewhere at some skate park, some kid's house that like owns a skate park, and he like met me and my wife there and just hugged us and talked to us for hours that night, you know. And it was one of the craziest moments of my life, you know. Obviously that was the moment that tied us together forever, and there are things I could talk about his personal life that are even crazier than that he's trusted me with, but he was like the first one to know. And you know, then he had planned this whole big Disney World finale taping, and he was sober as an ox, dude. I mean, he just broke out of rehab to come see me. He wasn't like getting fucked up. That wasn't his thing. He just wanted to film this thing with me. And kind of like, I guess maybe like, you know, if he didn't know where his future was going, at least we could film this like conclusion funny thing at Disney World and move on from it. And he, you know, because we lost the baby, he really wanted to see his son, who he has not seen in a very long time, and called his, you know, wife to come and fly to Florida so we could all do the Disney World thing together as a family. And I guess the kids never met Mickey Mouse, and that's what he promised them. And it's really sad because he ended up going to try to pick them up from the airport, and I didn't go with him, but that's when they had, you know, cops there to bring him back to where he was supposed to go. But he, even in that moment, you could see like the moments I talked to him, he's super sick of being where he is. He's doing everything they say. You know, he's just like, okay, I get it. You know, like it's been multiple facilities, hundreds of thousands of dollars, beating him over the head with it. And that's what they think they have to do, when really all along it has to be him wanting to get clean, right? I mean, that's it. At the end of the day, that's the only thing. Because few months,
I think he compounds, you know, his addiction. So when things are going bad for Bam, he starts dipping into his addiction more. Whereas if Bam, you know, gets his stride going, there was a minute there where Bam was on Thrasher magazine skating all the time. He was posting stuff to Instagram, and he looked like, you know, he was getting a lot of things going. But, you know, the jackass thing seemed to like it was really an ordeal for him. Understandably.
Yeah, well, so. you mentioned that time period, and there was, I mean, dude, we had planned so many tours, so many shows, so many things to do. Everything was on hold because of Jackass. Everything, and it's definitely hurt him. All of this has hurt him. I mean, he needs compensation almost for the rest of his life, because the only way he can recover is with natural God-given talent that he has still in him, but to be able to show people he could still do it. But even then, they don't always make it to the top. I mean, he almost would need some kind of documentary to be done about him to get that kind of infamy again, not something that he films himself. You know what I mean? It's kind of like how the Scumbag Vinny effect thing is, man. I mean, everybody that knows about me or anything about me has heard about it through the eyes and ears of somebody else's channel on YouTube, somebody else saying it, somebody else talking about me on a radio show. And I'm not famous, but any kind of infamy I do have comes from that lure. And like, you know, I could just imagine like some kind of sick doc coming out about the last 3 years and detailing his entire journey through this. But the thing is, he wants people to know about the last 10 years of his life. But it's like, bro, there's way too much. We'd have to make a series.
Yeah. If I say that's like a whole Netflix like Tiger King series, just the dramatization of Bam's life for the last 10 years. You could do multiple seasons on it.
Me and my wife have made so many jokes, because the last time I seen him was at Danny Duncan. Oh, well, before the trip when we lost the baby, before that was at Danny Duncan's house when we filmed a video of him trying to throw the cake at me and punching me or whatever, which I was not comfortable with whatsoever, by the way. I mean, I hadn't seen him for 2 years, and, you know, I knew he was at Danny Duncan's house, but I get blinded sometimes by, like, the coolness of it, like bragging to the people that were with me that I'm about to go see my friend Bam, who's
I'm going to go hang out with Bam,
and totally oblivious to the fact that I'm like literally the butt of the prank. But luckily for me, wearing the Scumbag Vinny t-shirt in the video has gotten me recognized everywhere, man. And when I say that,
you get recognized from Bam throwing a pie in your face. That's amazing.
It is the number one thing.
Bam is.
It's the number one thing I've ever been seen. And you want to know something crazy about this, man? it is only young kids and their parents. The young kids age from 15 to like 21, and they're just Danny Duncan fans, and they recognize me. I mean, I wear the shirt a lot, so it's easier when I have no hat on and I look like I did in the video. But at the same time, I'm also like, you know, like I'm crazy, you know, in public when I meet people. I always talk to them about my shit. And somebody overhears and then says, "Oh my God, I do know you." But no, there have been flat out people that walk up to me and ask me if that's who I am. And it's kind of crazy because I'm like, damn, man, this guy just punched me in the head. And that I worked for 15 years to do a stand up, and I get punched in the head by some guy. And I'm like, you know what I mean? That's like what puts
That's what does it for you. Now,
That's what does it.
People at Disney World recognize you.
Well, listen, and then I just started. So my wife created a TikTok account and just started filming me all the time, like, which was like, but her definition of all the time is like when I'm on the toilet or bullshit like that. Cause she's like, okay, well, if they think that's fucking amazing, cause she's witnessing it, I'll just film them all the time. And I would not even believe on TikTok, a video got 6 million views. It was just me standing in like a broken hurricane simulator at Busch Gardens. And it gets 6 million views. And then I just said, I will never make it with the plan I originally had in my head. Like a young kid that's like, I'm going to be funny. I'm going to get recognized. I'm going to make it. Like, no, dude, this is never going to happen that way.
Yeah, all the old fantasies of being like I'm going to be the next George Carlin, Rodney Dangerfield, insert comedian here. Like, that's not the path you can take anymore. You have to be on TikTok looking goofy. Like, that's really the best way.
I have friends. One of them does the goofy TikTok, and they're not friends really, but I call them friends. Let's just call them friends, right? In the comedy business. And the definition of friends by Scumbag Vinny means somebody who you've like basically tricked to get close enough to you to be able to help them make their career decisions and make money off their career and benefit off their career. And one of the friends does like the TikTok goofy thing, you know, and it works for him in certain ways and it doesn't for others. And then my other friend does I'm going to do the straight and narrow stand up to get discovered way. And that works for him in some ways and not in others. And they're both fucking idiots. And I plan on doing, you know, episodes and talking about them both and my history with them, but at their own separate times, you know, when the time is good and ready. But, you know, I don't
want to come out swinging with all beefs at once.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to come out.
Don't burn all the bridges simultaneously, as I say.
Well, I'll be honest. You know, my path has always been laid by bricks I put in front of my feet, so to speak. Right. So I'm building everything I've ever done since I was 17 years old in the entertainment business. Nobody's ever like come to me with a game plan and said, you do this and I'll do this for you. No one's ever helped me. I've had to fight for every single inch every way. And I think by doing that so much and working so hard for so long, every bad thing I did or ran into a bad situation got highlighted because people more, and this is what I learned as a kid too. Like my uncle told me, more people talk about something bad than something good. He used to sell cars, and he said to me, like, if you sell a car to someone and it's a good car, they're going to go tell like 5 people about it. But if you go sell someone a car and it's a bad car, they're going to tell like 100 people about it because they're pissed, you know? So I kind of took that advice into comedy, but I took it a little late because, you know, I've talked about this too, but I come from a pretty fucked up family, man, and they did a lot of crazy shit for money. So like for me, I don't know. I felt like what I was doing in this business.
You getting money, getting paid up front by a few local open micers isn't really a crime.
No,
compared to the things that you could be doing.
Especially since I gave them advice that was and guidelines that would help them. Basically, I would say to them, you know, everything that I had learned in the entertainment business and the advice I never took. And I always chose the dollar first. And I knew that most comedians that paid me would get over the loss of the money if they truly wanted to be in it. And if it was for the money, they would lean toward wanting to work with me to figure out how to make money like I do, right? And then if they didn't care about the money, they would use the anger against me. And dude, with the guidelines, I literally showed them do the same thing, but for not any money and make a little career for themselves eventually 10, 20 years later. And I'm literally been doing stand-up for almost I think 13 and a half, 14 years now. So all those experiences that I've had with comedians from the beginning to now played a part in their lives at some point, because I used to run every show I've ever been on. I was the producer of the show, and I would do that so I had a bigger take in the money. But at the same time, I missed out on a lot of gigs that would have got me in front of eyes to propel my career as a comic, because I really did well on stage. I still do. You know, like every time I go on stage, I'm funny. So I don't know what the fuck people who don't make people laugh want to do this for. Like, I've had bad nights. It has bad nights. But if you're not going up there 7 out of 10 times and making the whole room laugh, you really should be thinking about doing something else. And that's shot.
I have friends like
go ahead.
that you might know.
And I listen, I have never had enough time to talk to Ian Ellis or have him listen to me enough to be able to take any kind of career advice. And also, all he knows about me is I'm supposedly a scam artist. But he would have to discredit anybody I've ever worked with for being a complete dumbass. And I've worked with some pretty amazing people. So, you know, you don't always have to take my advice, but if you hear me and listen to my advice in this business and at least go against my advice, you'll be good. So if you hear my advice and you don't agree with me, as long as you do the complete opposite, you'll be fine. But there are a lot of comedians doing nothing, you know?
And that's what it seems like. It seems like a lot of it is, I don't even want to say like necessarily lack of trying. It's like the assumption that people aren't going to go with your thing. But like, there's people like my friend Ian, who he's like an art kid. Ian Ellis is like a college art dropout, basically. Like, he is in this because he wants to, you know, be a voice of reason in the world. Like, that's how he sees a comedian, like as a great philosopher that sometimes tells jokes. But then he doesn't understand why, when he's only trying to make himself laugh and not the audience, that he doesn't get asked to come back next week. So that's where the disconnect is.
Also, it's a really great excuse that comedians make for themselves when they don't want to put that pressure of succeeding on themselves.
I'm just about the art, man.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm a philosopher. I'm about the art. And basically what happens is it's a hippie sense. There's no real timetable to your career. There's no pressure. There's no timelines. There's no deadlines. There's no dollar amount that you have to impress for. There's none of that.
Whatever
all that Hollywood shit gets
happens,
taken
man.
out of it. But at the same time, unless you're super funny all the time, you'll never get noticed with that independent attitude. You got to play ball or do shit your own way and be happy with the results. And, you know, there are times that I look at some of my friends who took the straight and narrow in the comedy business, and I say, damn, I really have a lot of regret. Like, you know, that could have been me, but I have a beautiful family and a beautiful wife and like a great life. And so I say to myself, everything I did for myself to get where I'm at, like, I'm super happy that I chose that route, because a comedian's a very lonely life. Like, doing that on the road full time.
Right.
You know, and trying to make it. I'm not even talking about touring at the level of like a Kevin Hart. I'm talking about, you know, if you're not Ian Ellis, which his out is that he does it for the art, because he's got a family too now, right? I mean, he's got to have an excuse to stay in the game. Everybody needs one, you know. But there are comedians out there that
can't justify spending your spare money that you make working at the chicken restaurant, you know, getting on gas to the comedy club. That's not really.
Well, you know what else is crazy? I'm really voicing my opinion based on the New York scene. I do only believe there's two real scenes in the comedy business. It's LA and New York. And so everything else is just a cash grab for me. You know, when I'm talking about the straight and narrow, I'm talking about not having a family because you have to live in a city that costs $2,000 a month to live in a closet or on someone's couch. And you're out there doing 5-6 nights a week, doing mics every single night, doing shows every single night. Everywhere you go, you're killing it. And let me tell you something. I had a stretch where I was doing shit like that. And so there's a friend of mine who's doing that now. And I see him and I say to myself, damn, that's what it takes to really make it. Like, I know what it takes to make it. Because I've actually been to there so many times and never made it. So you start to learn, like, you know, I might not have it, you know, and I didn't want to sacrifice certain things in my life to get to that point. That's all it boils down to. There's 50% of the people who call themselves comedians that did supposedly make it. I'm funnier than, or I'm smarter than, you know,
Well,
or
I
even
also think there's something to the whole medium of stand-up comedy is kind of like it needs to evolve. I mean, how many different ways can you say the same, premise with a different punchline? Me and Ian Ellis always make fun of Shane Gillis, the comedian, because he has a lot of jokes where the setup is who was the first guy to, and then he jerk off into a plant. You know what I mean? Who was the first guy to want to fuck a kid? Like that type of stuff. Like that's what like a comedian would say. But it's really just this. The joke is who was the first guy, and there's so many comedians who are at the level where you're talking about, where they're successful, they're touring, they might even have specials. But really, if you watched, Premium Blend and Comedy Central Presents or HBO in the 2000s and 90s, you've heard a lot of what they have to say before. So there's something to being on TikTok, using Instagram, doing live streams on YouTube, podcasting, where you can be funny in a newer, fresher way that's like not covered in scar tissue already. Like I've already laughed at all the stand-up bits pretty much. So it's a thing where if you can't go live and like control the room, basically comedians are like MCs for rapping at this point. Like you have to go and be able to make the room laugh. You know what I mean? Like the idea of I'm going to say something profound and edgy that's never been said before. Like that might happen by accident, but that doesn't really happen like it used to. Even Dave Chappelle isn't as edgy as people make him out to be.
No, and not only that, it's like, those kind of folks are at a different level. There are the chosen ones that are super smart and super funny, and everybody thinks that comedy is one of those things attained to be. Like there are so many people that start comedy and they're like, oh man, one day I'm going to be just like that if I just keep working at it. And it's like, no, bro, I was fucking born funny. You are just a retard.
Richard Pryor, we're basically the same guy.
yeah. And like, that's how I feel now. Fuck it, bro. You gotta feel that way. I feel if you're not on that side of train of thinking, everybody else is a loser in your eyes, So I have like met many alpha males in this business that have looked me in my face and been like, I'm that motherfucker, And that was Artie Lange with 2 bloody nostrils, still going out in front of 300 people and killing it. He's like, I'm Keith Richards of this shit, like I'll never die. And that is me, man. That's what I want this show to become. I want to chase legends. Chasing legends for me, I've realized is a big part of what I love about what I've chosen to do with my life. When I say chasing legends, I mean everything from interviewing them, meeting them, becoming one of them, that kind of folklore-ish, fairy tale type. When I say fairy tale, I mean pre-Disney. I'm talking about like grungier shit. And hearing people's stories that way is something that lasts forever. We
also are in like a weird time where legends are kind of all that there is. Like there's no one really up and coming in any kind of industry except like sports. And I guess
it's all bullshit until the cards are laid out, right?
Yeah, everybody can tell in the long run. Like you never know that someone's a legend until they're in their 40s. You know what I mean?
Or even far past living. How many people have come back? Later on. I mean, cult icons and things like that. And for me, my whole angle has been like, one day people, like all the shit people talk, one day somebody's gonna sit and go, but this couldn't have been coincidence with Vinny. There had to be some reason that the energy connected all the dots for everything that's happened with this guy and the people around him to happen. And never to get redemption. Of course, redemption for me is something I seek, but it's more for like the story purpose, like good, bad, or indifferent. I just want it to be told, and I've always wanted it to be told the right way. Because the media really does shake things up when you start to work with people. Like 99% of the shit that like everybody reports, is wrong. I mean, and you are the closest as far as but you've even admitted you're just piecing things together that you see. So it's not like you have actual facts some of the time,
I mean, So like I've asked you so many questions about Artie because I don't follow the Artie thing so well, and I've heard so many incorrect rumors about Artie. Like before I knew who you were, Vinny, I thought you were Artie's personal like coke dealer. Like that was the image I had painted. Like I didn't have an idea. Like now I guess it's maybe Bob, used to be Bob Levy, but you know at the time I didn't know who it was.
Comedians get coke from anybody in any city they meet, right? Like if you do coke is everywhere in the world. Drugs are everywhere. There's never one dealer. But in Artie's situation, he has handlers. And handlers are people that make sure he can do whatever the fuck he has to do to get where he's going. Because if he doesn't get where he's going, there's no money and there's no business, you know? And the thing is, I was insensitive, even on SCUMTOWN, talking about him like he's a business, but every comedian that is a professional is a business. Everything about them is a business. There are multiple streams of revenue that can be earned just off of a person. But, you know, the SCUMTOWN guys were trying to use like that human emotion, or say like, I don't have human emotion with that. And it's like, I said I didn't, but thinking back and like listening back after it, and that was one of the biggest regrets I made, was saying that, because like, of course I did. I'd had many talks with Artie where we'd be sitting in the car and talking about what his life could be like sober, you know, but that was the path he chose, you know.
But also, whose responsibility is it? Like, is it our responsibility as nobodies to meet a famous person like Artie Lange that I've been listening to on the radio since I was a little kid in my dad's work truck? You know what I mean? Like I've watched Private Parts when I was 7 years old. Like I've known about Artie Lange my entire life. It's almost insensitive of other people, of Nick Mullen, to be like, well, what about human emotion? Like, don't you care? No, like he's a superstar compared to me. I've been well aware of who he is my entire life. Why do I have to look out for him? It's my responsibility to look out for Artie Lange, and damn, since when?
Well, Nick is also talking at that moment, like from his personal perspective, because he has a bit of fame, he has a bit of money. You know, I don't know anything about his vices, but I'm sure there's something he's fucking doing, right? You know, and that's just like his own paranoia kind of talking. And I love him, and I'm supposed to be going on the show, so not that he's gonna fucking listen to this, but you know, hopefully that doesn't deter that. Just me being honest, because I'd be honest right to his face, no matter who he is, you know. And I would just say, I personally believe, again, after re-listening, rethinking, and all this time has passed, and you know, he has a million different episodes to do, and all these fans, and one episode with SCUMTOWN, you know, people bring it up forever. So that Artie situation, people always comment and bring that up to me, how Nick got real serious with me about Artie. But at the end of the day, even Artie would kind of call Nick a little bitch about how he was talking about it. You know what I mean? Like, Artie was like, bro, fuck, man, I got caught with heroin. I got to go to jail. I brought him to court. He went to jail. It was a man. Like, we treated it like men do. And that's a lost art form in the world, so to speak, is to just handle your business like a man. I've been in many different court situations in the last few years while dealing with all this, that I like to think that, you know, who because of who my family was, I was, and how I was raised, and the environment I was raised in, I was always going to court for one of my uncles or something, and they were involved in some big ass fucking federal case. And that's the truth. And so I always kind of knew how to conduct myself in a courtroom, you know, and I got out of a couple real big cases, Lane. And, you know, now we're an hour in, and I haven't even introduced you as my co-host, everybody. This is my producer, Lane, co-host of the show. You're going to be hearing him talk to me a lot. But
coming in and out of the stream as go on, they'll figure out who I am as time goes on.
Yeah, because you're a permanent fixture here. But yeah, so all that shit's normal to me, man. And COVID really made me stop and look at everything. And what's cool is, you know, I'm an old school kind of dude. Like I said, like I've already kind of like moved on and started to build another business to make an income for my family and move on. And ever since I've like kind of gotten away from all this stuff, everything is growing on social media. Like the views, I mean, there's over 20 million views related to me somehow on the internet. And a few years ago, even during the height of all this, there was not that kind of attention whatsoever, you know. So it's still growing to this day. So I feel like, you know, now's the time to come back and do the podcast thing and get yapping again so people can enjoy listening to my bullshit.
And I think people like hearing about the business / scam side of it, right? Because that's something all you hear comedians talk about on podcasts is they pretty much talk like shop. Like all they do is talk about the process and, you know, philosophy and, you know, what it really means to be funny. But it's all a bunch of guys that pretty much just do podcasts in lieu of, you know, TV shows, movies, you know, radio. They just sit at home and want to try to make sure their audience shows up to their next performance. If a lot of comedians aren't proactively putting out content, trying to do, you know, funny or interesting things, be it on their podcast or off their podcast, like a lot of people just kind of get their following and phone it in. Whereas I feel like there's a big opportunity for like people to talk about, you know, new opportunities and to get new people involved that aren't just the same, you know, 80 people that go on every podcast. Like there's no need to talk to Andrew Santino, you know what I mean, unless you're his friend. Like what do we need to hear him, you know, for the 100th time?
You know, people are just touring around doing that, right? You know,
yeah, that's what people do. They tour the podcast circuit, and it's like they find a loop of 30, 40 podcasts of their friends that they can go on, and they all just go on each other's podcasts. But nothing really happens.
That's why I really like burning bridges right away with people, because you then, like, if you're gonna be friends with someone like Bam, at least if you make it through the hard times, you know you're really friends, you know? Like, all these people that talk to each other on these podcasts, like, when shit hits the fan, nobody's gonna fucking back none of them up. Like, look at what happened with Joe Rogan. Look at what happened with Tony Hinchcliffe. Everybody, everybody, they all back away from each other and start detaching themselves. So you know what? At the end of the day, if something happens with me, Lane, and this podcast takes off, it will be authentic in a way, because people that listen to me will be like, you know what, dude? He may not have many people in his corner in the business itself. And by business, I mean like local comic support, because if you're like smart enough to make it in this business, you're going to meet me and you're either going to love me or hate me. So you can name any celebrity in the world, and if I sat down with them, they're either going to love me or they're going to hate me. There's going to be no in between. There's going to be no disinterest in the conversation. They're not going to want to leave after 5 minutes. They're just going to say to themselves, this kid's full of shit, or this kid actually knows what the fuck he's talking about, you know? And with that, I think we should leave a little bit more for next week. Lane, what do you think, man?
It's a good first episode. I definitely got to work on a little bit of the audio kinks. So if anyone complains about that, it should be a lot better by the next episode.
Well, if you listen to the first ever episode of SCUMTOWN, I'm pretty sure the audio was all fucked up for that. And SCUMTOWN, a lot of fans.
It's the normal podcast thing.
Yeah.
The first episodes of With Apologies, which is the podcast that I'm from, was 3 guys on Skype, and like they were recording a microphone through the speakers. You know what I mean? So that's how my podcasting career started. So we're doing a lot better than that.
And for anybody listening, definitely go check out the With Apologies podcast on the Ian Ellis LLC YouTube channel. I do call into that show and fight with the guys a lot and give my opinions on things, and that's when you can hear more.
Vinny Beedle clips up there too.
Yeah, well, they got a huge fan base. Yeah, for sure. And Lane and I just developed a great chemistry. We've been talking about doing this for a very long time, and I'm happy we finally did. So is there anywhere that people could support you or find you?
Ian Ellis LLC is my YouTube channel. I'll definitely be clipping this show and trying to do some promo stuff for it. But yeah, follow. Is it Scamming with Vinny Beedle is the official name of the YouTube channel?
I think it's just gonna be Scamming with Vinny.
Yeah,
people relate to Vinny.
Best way to do it.
Yeah, people relate to Vinny a lot more, you know. So guys, if you're listening and you've heard clips of this, or you're listening now on my YouTube channel, please go like and subscribe to my channel. Of course, as you know, I am Scumbag Vinny, but I'm trying to retire from being a scumbag. And so if you subscribe and donate and support by buying merchandise, well, then you know that money can go toward me living a life of just telling you stories about the fucked up shit I used to do, and I won't have to do any of it anymore. So
we're gonna have those Estonia rings online as soon as possible.
yeah, maybe that guy kind of hates me because, you know, at that time when he was even bringing those up on Steve-O's podcast, he was also kind of beefing with me. So it was like only one of us were gonna survive out of that, and it was either me or him, and it was me. But thank you, Lane. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's episode. Tune in next week. We're gonna drop an episode every Friday. So tune into that. Every Friday we're going to have an episode dropped, and we're going to stick to audio only for now. I like audio only, don't you? I mean, that's pretty chill. People could listen when they're...
Yeah, I think it's easy to work with and edit, and then as we get our connections more synced up and stuff like that, we could do video if we want to. But, you know, that's when you know a podcast is taking off, is if you see in the comments, everyone's like, we need video. That's when you know it's time to take it serious.
Of course. All right, guys. Well, peace out. We'll see you next time. Later.